Howdy, folks. Greyhawk 4x4 coming at you again, your resident vintage gamer. And this is your AD&D campaign update for this past Friday and Saturday, as we call it, a marathon session, which is what we did. Now, as you know, I normally do a live on Sundays. Would have been yesterday, but I put out a notice that I wasn't going to be able to do that because I had plans with the wife. It was actually her work Christmas party yesterday. So I did not do a live yesterday. So effectively what I had as a 55-year-old was Friday night, 5 hours of gaming. Take a break, come back the next morning, 10 hours of gaming, so for a total of 15 hours of DMing, followed by yesterday, a work Christmas party for my wife, where I thought that, as a smart idea, when they were bringing the appetizers around, I'm like, what are those? Oh, those are duck egg rolls with some hoisin sauce. Yeah, I'll take some of that. The hoisin sauce was very spicy. Then and following that, then we had our meal. And then after the meal, they had dessert and stuff. And I thought, well, with the dessert, I'll get an Irish coffee at about 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. After having duck egg rolls with very spicy hoisin sauce. Now, the Irish coffee was delicious. It was very strong coffee to begin with, because the place we were at also was kind of a coffee bar. They had like fancy coffee and fancy cocktails, and so it was very strong coffee to begin with. And then of course there was the Bailey's Irish Cream, and there was whiskey in it. They did it right, But yeah, I just want you can figure out the rest for yourself. For the gastrointestinal tract of a 55-year-old man at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, yeah, you can about guess how my day is going today. So, regardless, I have to do this video. So, I'm a little tired. I'm not going to lie. We're going to get through this. It's going to be a long video. So get yourself something to drink. Maybe get a snack. Strap in. This is going to be a long one. So Friday night, I did post a preemptive, kind of a pre-game video that I'm sure some of you saw, where I showed the entire game room ready to go for the marathon session and everything, which got pretty good response and everything. So I thought, well, that's good. And then I was fully intent upon trying to capture some live footage. Here's the problem: when you're doing double duty of DMing and hosting, you forget about other shit. And I forgot all about trying to capture some live footage. So I apologize, but we're gonna do a full recap here, so you'll get the gist of what occurred. So Friday night, to recap real quick, as you know, where we left off, our heroes had cleared out the entire upper level of the giant compound, the hill giant compound, and they had defeated basically all of the bosses, everything, all the big baddies in the dungeon, or in that stronghold. However, they had not completely cleared the basement level, the cavern level. So when we started up Friday, they wanted to completely clear the basement level. They didn't want to miss any treasure, they didn't want to miss any XP, etc. Now, they systematically went through, started clearing rooms and so forth. And there were a couple of rooms that still had some giant folk in them. One room actually had a couple of fire giants in it. Now, going by logic, obvious question would be, well, how did they not hear all the combat and shit that was going on earlier? This was at the complete opposite side of the cavern area level, hundreds of yards away. So these two particular fire giants were in the forge area, forging stuff, armor, weapons, and so forth. So it was probably loud in there too. So they weren't expecting that. Now, they defeated the fire giants. There was only 2 of them. And our heroes are fairly powerful at this point, of course. But they did take, if I remember correctly, they did take some considerable damage again. And there was a torture chamber as well at one point. And they encountered some stuff in there. They cleared the torture chamber. And in the blacksmith area, in the forge area, with the fire giants, there were some chained up dwarves that were being basically used for forced labor. The dwarves were having to, do all this forging and metalwork and all this stuff. And most of them were just common 0-level dwarfs, NPCs. However, in the module, one of them was a high-level fighter that had been captured and forced into this indentured servitude. He's actually an 8th-level dwarf fighter. Yeah, just regular fighter. But that sumbitch has like an 18-something strength and 70 hit points. Now, this is right out of the module. This is Gary Gygax here. And he, of course, is willing to go with the group because he now hates giants. Like, he wants to eradicate giants from the face of the earth. Or the face of Greyhawk, face of O-Earth, the planet of Greyhawk. So he did, he's going to go with them. And I gave it, because there was no name to the character in the module. It just describes this higher 8th level fighter, dwarf, strong guy, So I gave him the name Slag Stouthammer. I thought that was a pretty cool name. So Slag joins him. So now they've got him. They end up clearing the rest of the cavern area. The very last thing in the cavern area, they knew of a weird temple, as the orcs put it. When they dealt with the orcs, when our heroes had dealt with the orcs, and the orcs were like, hey, we want to get out of here, but the giants, have enslaved us and all that. We'll help you against the bugbears and the giants and all that other stuff. And during all that, our heroes said, well, what's that blocked off area over there? And they said, oh, that leads to the weird temple. You don't want to go over there. That's why it's all blocked off and everything. The characters always remember it. That was from a few sessions back. So after all the fighting and the baddies were all the bosses were killed and all that stuff, the orcs at some point fucking took off. They split. They found exits and they just took off. While the party was all fighting and everything else, the orcs split. So they're gone. So at this session here, at the very end, the last thing they decided to do, they said, we want to check out the weird temple. I'm like, okay, weird temple it is. So they cleared the blockade and all that, and they go down there, and I described it to them as this weird-looking temple altar area with, like, blackened walls with all these depictions of, rituals and blood and demons and all this kind of weird shit. And there was some swirling and stuff at the altar amongst in the walls, and so forth. And the cleric decided she wanted to go up there, and I think she was going to try and cleanse the evil from the altar, whatever. She decides to touch it. She touches it, and in the book, it basically says, now these are spoilers. If you haven't figured that out by now, these are spoilers. So if you're planning to play this at some point down the road, you shouldn't be watching anymore. But it says the first person that touches, or each person that touches it has to roll or go insane. If they fail, it's like a 50% chance of going insane. She fails, she goes insane. Slag Stouthammer comes up. He tries to attack it. Same thing. He goes insane. So now I got 2 insane party members. I think it was, the first 2. So when she did it, she went insane, and it says in the book that it drops an item. An item drops from the altar. Appears and drops. Second person, another item drops. And so now they've got 2 completely blithering, insane party members that are useless now, including the cleric. So they go in, they basically get them, and they tie them up to take them out, and they take the items. One item is a scarab, the other is a big jewel. So now they've got to figure out, okay, how are we going to fix these party members? For insanity, it's not really spelled out anywhere in the DM's guide, player's handbook, Unearthed Arcana, none of it. It's not really spelled out how that would be repaired. However, there's, of course, stuff like remove disease, there's heal, there's restoration. And upon reading all that, I made the determination that because of the power of this particular affliction, it was going to take restoration for them to be restored back to normal. So they knew, okay, we've got to get back someplace like Devers to get that taken care of. So they start traveling back. Now, mind you, the other thing that had happened was at some point they found an entire stash of this wine. Now, this is what's in the module, the way it's described, and we're talking a lot of wine. Kegs and casks. It's a whole room of all this wine and stuff. And they have a death's head marking on the corks that go in to seal them and everything. So Slag, and this happened, this was not Slag. This was the illusionist's follower, that the thief that follows our assassin illusionist. It was him that he that decided to try this wine. And it's described in the book that if somebody tastes this wine, they will, and there's a roll that they had to make, there is a % chance that if they fail, they're going to continue to drink this, given the opportunity, until they get into a drunken stupor and pass out. Like, they will try it. They have this overcoming urge to continue to drink it because it's so good. It's like the best wine anybody's ever tasted, and they will continue to quaff it until they literally get into a stupor and pass out. And that's what happened. That's what he did. He failed. So now they have this completely drunk assistant or follower, 2 insane people, and all this wine. And they had passed some of it. If you remember, they have a magic mirror that is at the Mage's Tower in Devers, and the mage there, Estimus, checks in with them through scrying through this special mirror. And when he did that, they're able to pass stuff through the magic mirror. They're able to pass items through. They pass this wine to him, and they, he says, he takes it to whoever there in the town, and says, oh, this is like the best wine anybody's ever seen. Now, this is right out of the module. This is what Gary Gygax put in the module. And he describes how much quantity there was. Well, our heroes made it so that all of it eventually gets passed through the mirror. So now they've got these gallons upon gallons of this wine. Now, it says in the book that it is valued at between 200 and 800 gold per quart of this wine. They passed all of it through. It took some time, but they passed it all through. The mage there stored it and so forth. So that's waiting for them when they get back. So let's set the scene for that. Now, they still have the two insane people. The dwarf, after a couple days, after a massive hangover, he's okay. The follower. And then you had I have to back up here. Before they went back in to clear the basement, the cavern area, they had gone down to the town, Middleburg, that had been the one being ransacked by the hill giants and so forth. That basically that town had been destroyed for the most part. And they went to the remaining people there that were running the tavern. And the cleric, Mo, she decides she's going to donate a shit ton of gold to the town to help them rebuild. Because she's a lawful good cleric. And said, as you rebuild, if you could build a small little church to Saint Cuthbert, which is her deity, that's all I ask. I'm going to give you all this money to. And she gives, I forget how much, 30,000 gold or some crazy shit. I can't remember how much she gave them, but it was a lot. It was more than enough for them to start sending off to get lumber brought in and stonework brought in, stone brought in and all this stuff to start rebuilding and all that. And some masons or hire masons or whatever, So it's going to take a while to rebuild the town and everything, but she wants the church there. So they did that, and then the one ranger, our ranger druid, that is Miethro, or Maze as we call him, he decided that Sam, who was the ranger scout of the town when they first got there that they met, he was the one that showed them where the cave was that they could make like a little headquarters out of, a little camp out of. He tells Sam, hey, I'm going to try and get some more like rangers and druids and stuff to migrate this way so that you guys can kind of build up a kind of a cadre of rangers and druids, etc., to protect the town and all that type of stuff. So those two things, rebuilding the town, setting up some type of a ranger corps, and all that, we're all set in motion. So then they get all their shit together and they start heading back to Devers. Now, they've still got two insane party members, and they've got to stop. Of course, it was like 38 days of travel. And so I'm rolling the whole time for, miscellaneous encounters and shit like that, random encounters and stuff like that. They end up having a random encounter at some point. And I basically said, well, you guys have to, midday, you guys have to pull over to make a pit stop so everybody can basically use the bathroom and everything. And while you're doing that, I had rolled randomly, and it was giant spiders had come down out of the trees and attacked them while they're doing their pit stop thing. So they're fighting these giant. Now, our party's very powerful at this point. They're quite capable and everything. However, in first edition, if they're poison creatures, I don't care how powerful you are, you get hit, you fail your saving throw, you're dead. That's it. Fail saving throw, dead from poison. You're dead. That's it. They had 2 people die from poison. Well, they had a person die. They had a character die. And they had the cave bear that the ranger now had as a pet. The ranger druid had he has a cave bear as a pet. Both died. They were poisoned and died. They defeat the spiders, but they lose these 2. One of them, luckily, the druid had a remove poison or a neutralize poison spell, which keeps the person from dying permanently. But the bear was dead. They had some ointment. There's some special, I forget what it's called, Keonig's ointment or something like that, which is the same thing as the spell. But they use it very sparingly because they only have so much of it. He decided to use it on the cave bear to bring the cave bear back. So those get restored, but they're down one. They only had like 3 uses of this ointment stuff. So they had to burn one of those. So even though they had basically cleared the steading of the hill giant chief, they lost 2 people to insanity. they had one die of poisoning and a bear, and their cave bear died of poisoning. So they were taking some losses and some defeats and stuff like that, or some casualties. But they basically make it back to Devers. When they get to Devers, most of them have enough XP at this point to level up. So, which is one of the reasons why they wanted to go, because in my campaign, you have to find trainers, and they know in Devers they have all the training facilities to train all the different classes. So you have to receive training, and you have to pay a fee, several thousand gold, to get training. For me, it's a logical thing. It's a logical thing, and it causes them to have to go back to town and actually go through the motions of what an actual adventurer would have to do. It's not just like they're out in the middle of combat somewhere and they hit a magic number and bing, all of a sudden they have these new spells they can learn. No, someone's got to teach them that stuff, And it's a gold thing to it, because they're getting a lot of treasure, a lot of gold and stuff. You got to have a certain amount of gold sinks, because otherwise they just become ridiculously rich and they can just literally buy every magic item. I mean, it's just ridiculous, right? So you got to have a certain amount of balancing there. So they get back to the town. They go to the temple, and sure enough, the high priest there says, "Yeah, I can do restoration on her, the cleric, and she's a member of that. It's actually a temple of St. Cuthbert, so she gets a discount. But restoration cost 80,000 gold. So because of her affiliation, being a member of the church, it was 50,000 gold for her. But she didn't have that. Now she gave most of her money to the other town to help them rebuild. But they do it for her anyway, knowing she's good for it, and go on. But they didn't want to put out the money to restore Slag Stouthammer, this badass dwarf that they found in there that joined their group, this NPC that joined their group. So they basically tell her, Mo, the cleric, they say, well, we can keep him. We have facilities here for the insane where we can care for him, but there's a cost. And I think I said it was like 200 gold a month or something like, I can't remember what I threw out a number. And she agreed to pay that. She's going to pay for him to be lodged there and cared for in case they decide down the road they do want to spend the money for whatever reason to get him restored, that they can do that. So she is going to literally pay. And she's a lawful good cleric. That's what she would do. She's going to pay to care for him. She's given a lot of money to build that church in Middleburg as part of, to rebuild the town and build the church in Middleburg and so forth. So that's all happening. Everybody else is going to get training and so forth. But our gnome, illusionist assassin, he's more concerned with something else. He is concerned with all that wine that they had sent through and wanting to sell it, because he's all about the dollars, the bling bling. So he starts figuring out people he can try and sell this to, and they luckily have this scrying mirror at the mage tower, so he's able to basically, one person can step through as a portal through the mirror, and they're able to step back, but only one person. So he decides all these places that they've been and done quests for and stuff like that. They've done quests for kings and queens and nobles and so forth. He goes and starts visiting each and every one of them through the scrying mirror, and he takes a small little pony keg of this wine with him to where they can try it. And of course, as it says in the book, if anybody takes it, they're going to think it's the greatest wine ever, and so forth. And they all, he's selling it for like 6,000 gold for a 5-gallon keg of it, a small keg of it, and he's selling this stuff everywhere he can, So he does that to make a bunch of gold, but then he runs out of people, and they've got all this excess wine and so forth. And then they remembered that if you go way back, if you've been watching this series for a long time, there was a group called the Watchers that were kind of like the organized crime of my campaign. And them, along with the help from St. Cuthbert, they had defeated the Watchers. way back, and they had a little stronghold on an island in the middle of the Near Div Lake, big, gigantic lake. It's called the Lake of Unknown Depths. It's a gigantic lake, and it has this island in the middle, and they had a hidden fortress there, or stronghold, whatever you want to call it. And they remembered, oh, we have that now, because the Watchers are gone. That is essentially their parties now. They can, but it's isolated. It's out in the middle of nowhere. Perfect. They decide to transport all of that wine there. There's actually a room that you have to teleport into, and that's the only way in and out. And so they just move it there, and it's basically essentially a vault. So now they have all this excess wine there that they can, at some point, if they need gold, they can try to sell some more of it, etc. So again, I don't think Gary Gygax ever envisioned anybody trying to take all that wine out of the giant stronghold. But I wasn't in any position to tell my players they couldn't do it, because what they were talking about was logical, using this magic mirror that Gary Gygax provided in the Temple of Elemental Evil, which is where they found it. So they do have this now as a revenue stream if they need it, which also, in first edition, you get XP for whatever gold you get. You sell something for 500 gold, you get 500 XP as well. So they have that. So now we've got the wine, the cleric's been taken care of. The ranger druid, Maze, he goes over to the druid grove where Moonglow, the arch druid in the town in Devers, is at. And he introduces, the cave bearer to her, and which, by the way, they were talking about a name or whatever, and this was on Friday night. This might have actually been Saturday by now. I can't remember. It all blends together. But we had been drinking, a little bit here and there, and just as a joke, we were talking about naming the bear. I said, Testicles. Well, that's what they decided. So they've named the bear Testicles. And actually, the gnome added on to it, he's Testicles the Hairy. So, there you go. That's our group. I guess I'm no better because I'm the one that threw out the Testicles, right? So he introduces her to the bear, vice versa, and then he tells her that he wants his idea about sending some rangers and druids and stuff down south to Middleburg to help them put a cadre together of riders of Middleburg or whatever to protect the area and so forth. And because his goddess is Alona and hers, the goddess of nature and so forth, that they will help spread the word of Alona while they're there and all that. So he's put that into motion. So you've got Cuthbert through the cleric, Alona through our ranger druid. That all is going on. You got the wine. You've got, and then you got the training stuff. Now, also, as side content, if you remember, I have a thing called the Sons of Vengeance, a group that are a pair of brothers that somehow somebody in their family was killed, and they wanted to seek vengeance, and then they found out that there were other people in the realm that were in the same situation, so they created this mercenary group called the Sons of Vengeance that people could hire to carry out acts of vengeance in their family's name, etc. So we knew from intelligence that our gnome assassin had a hit on him through the Sons of Vengeance from some family of Wendell the Dirty. Wendell the Dirty was the NPC that had joined against his will, basically. He was snookered into it. Let's say that. He made a bet. He lost the bet, and he had to honor the bet. But if they would have just left him alone to begin with, he would have never been in that situation. However, he was in their care, in their company. He ends up disappearing. The family of Wendell the Dirty hire Sons of Vengeance. Rumors abound through the realm that this little gnome is the leader. Whether or not he is, it doesn't matter. The rumors are that the gnome is the leader of this particular band of adventurers. So the hit is on him. Now, if you remember, on their way down to Middleburg, they got attacked by some assassins. Assassins were unsuccessful. They were killed. There were notes on them. One of the notes said something about they're headed for Middleburg. Stop them. And it was signed Z something. Z for Zarina. And then there was another note telling the assassins that actually were the ones that failed, hey, this is your job, you need to take care of this, and so forth. And it was signed by somebody else, supposedly one of the leaders of the Sons of Vengeance. So the party puts this all together. At some point, they talk to Nick Blackloins, who is the second in command of the Thieves Guild Endeavors, behind Dorian Lightfoot, my old player character, who is the leader of the Thieves Guild. And they say, hey, Nick, what do you know about all this? And then he sees the note, and he looks at the initials, and he puts two and two together and assumes that that is Zarina, who is Dorian Lightfoot's, the leader of the Thieves Guild. That's his apprentice, who is also, she's also the gatekeeper of the guild. Like when anybody makes it down into the guild area, the hidden guild area and so forth, and divas, that's who they have to get checked in by and basically vetted by before they're allowed in. She's that person. So they are able to deduce through some role playing her motive would be, in addition to being that person of the apprentice and the gatekeeper of the guild, she's also Dorian's apprentice and mistress. Now, if you remember, the reason they're going to Middleburg is to investigate the giants and try and rescue Dorian Lightfoot's wife, who was taken by the giants at some point a couple of years ago, if she's still alive, to try and find her and rescue her if she's still alive. So through deduction there, they basically say, oh, in addition to the hit on Hingle McCringleberry, our gnome illusionist, assassin, by the Sons of through the Sons of Vengeance from Wendell the Dirty's family. In addition to that, Zarina has obviously hired them to take out the party because she doesn't want them to rescue Dorian's wife if the wife is still alive. Obviously, jealous lover type of a deal. So, fast forward now to this last session. All that has occurred. Obviously, the assassins failed. Zarina never heard back. So she didn't know whether that it had been carried out, hadn't been carried out. Our gnome illusionist goes down into the Thieves Guild. She's there, and she sees him walking, and she's like, she's seen a ghost because she thought, oh, he should have been whacked by now. You know, and he's like, oh, surprised to see me? That type of, this is all role-playing that we're doing here. And she gets noticeably nervous. She starts sweating and everything. And he's like, yeah, I just got to talk to Nick and Dorian about a couple of things. And she can't stop him. You know, he's well known in the guild. He's sanctioned. He's paid up his dues, everything. She can't, like, tell him he can't come in. So he goes in and talks to Nick. And he says, hey, Nick, you know, what are we going to do about this or whatever? And Nick's like, hey, man, this is between you and the boss and her and all that. So hemming and hawing, all that. He goes, Hingle goes in and tells Dorian, hey, I got to tell you about this, boss. He shows him the note and so forth. Dorian obviously figures it out that, yes, she must be jealous. Yes, she doesn't want the wife to be found. She wants things the way they are. If the wife is still alive and found, it will change everything, and she doesn't want it that way. So the way it ends up is Dorian tells Nick, you're going to have to hire a new gatekeeper, a new vetting person for the front. And Dorian says he's going to take care of the problem. So, but there was some interesting role play that went on there because our player character, Brad's character, the gnome, Hingle McCreary, he was genuinely, he didn't know how Dorian was going to take it. He didn't know if Dorian was going to act out towards him, get pissed at him. He didn't know things. So Dorian has taken on that role of going to deal with the Zarina problem. But it does not solve the problem with the Sons of Vengeance, who are still out there somewhere. They're still hit out and everything. Hingle, at some point, put out a counter hit, saying through the guild, saying, if you guys find these brothers of the Sons of Vengeance and take them out, I forget how much he was offering, like 5,000 gold or something like that. Dorian, as a result of everything that occurred, tells Nick, hey, out of my personal money, Dorian says, out of my personal money, add 10,000 gold to the bounty for these Sons of Vengeance assholes. So that's how that got left. The bounty has been upped on the Sons of Vengeance, but as far as I know, the hits are still active, and the Zarina problem is supposed to be being taken up by Dorian himself, personally. Now, we'll see. We don't know how that's all going to play out, but that's how we left it. So now we've covered the wine issue. We've covered the this issue with the Thieves Guild and the Sons of Vengeance and all that stuff. The cleric issue, Slag Stouthammer being put in to be cared for as insane. And the clerics paying to rebuild the town of Middleburg, the rangers and druids trying to get people recruited to go there to help set up defenses and so forth. All these side things are happening. So they end up leveling up. All the characters level up and all that, and they had to do some training, like 2 days each of training and so forth. Oh, I almost forgot. So, I told you it's going to be a long video. Break it up into pieces if you need to. I'm just going to keep going. Because this was a marathon session, so this is what you're going to get. So in addition, when Hingle traveled to one of the people to try and sell them some wine, one of them was Meslo. Meslo is the crazy wizard that likes to collect body parts from creatures, like exotic body parts from like creatures and stuff, because he does experiments with them. He has a thing called anatomancy or biomancy, where he basically takes those and he comes up with spells to attack specific body parts on specific creatures. So basically, very difficult creatures that are exotic and that are very difficult to defeat and so forth. He comes up with spells and stuff to attack specific body parts and stuff like that. And it's called anatomancy or biomancy, school of that he's come up with, school of magic. So, but he's very eccentric, very crazy, but he's also known to be very rich. He adventured for a long time before he kind of became a research guy and a hermit, and he has but no one dares try to rob him because they know he's super powerful. So he's got all his money and gold and gems and everything else, and he does his experiments, and he's kind of crazy. So he tries. I think he does sell him some wine. But while he's talking with him, he asked Meslo if Meslo could, if he had a spider, some type of large, like a huge spider, giant spider, whatever, and an orc, like either the bodies of them or live ones, if he did, if he could somehow do some whatever, Dr. Frankenstein stuff or whatever, to create something known as a spork. This is what Brad, who plays our illusionist assassin, came up with. He says, can you make a spork from a spider and an orc? Because you have driders, remember, you have drow and spiders who were combined to make driders with the body of a spider and part body of the drow. So they have like arms that they can fight with swords and stuff like that, but the body, yeah. So driders are a thing. He decides, if I get you a spider and an orc, can you make a spork? This happened. If you've made it this far, you earned that. I hope you enjoy it, because that happened. That's a real thing. So now, and Meslo is fascinated by the idea. He's like, why, I never thought of something like that. But if I were given enough time and I were given the right components from a spider and an orc, I could indeed, perhaps, produce said spork. And so Hingo's going to try and capture a live spider and a live orc. If not, he's going to take the carcasses to Meslo to do this thing. That's a thing. Okay, that's all the side stuff that I can think of that happened. That's all the side shit. So once they get all leveled up, they get all their affairs and all these different side things all handled, taken care of. Excuse my language, but these motherfuckers decide to go back to the Temple of Elemental Evil. No, they're not going to go fight the frost giants. That's the next step, right? They killed the hill giant. They took care of the hill giant situation. Found a way to the frost giants. The map, the crazy chain that they can teleport there. They decide, now we're going to go back to Temple of Elemental Evil. The DM had already filed all the Temple of Elemental Evil shit away. I thought, well, I mean, it wasn't that I never thought they'd go back. They, up until that very second, they never even made any kind of inclination, no utterance, nothing that they were even considering it. Because if they had, I would have went ahead and pulled all that stuff back out and kind of went over it again and everything else. Nah, nothing. So here I am, hungover. It's the second day, of course. Hungover, ready to... They're going to go to the frost giant thing, right? In addition, by the way, if you remember, another side thing, they had rescued a elf in the giant compound who agreed to go with them. Once they cleared everything, he's like, hey, I got to go back home now. I helped you guys, which he really didn't. He didn't have any spell book, but he had agreed to go with him and everything. He says, I'm a Sylvan elf. I have to go. My home is in Hornwood. And Hornwood is being, the towns there in that area and everything are the ones being destroyed by the frost giants. So he heads off that way. So now they know that the frost giants are in fact doing raids in the Hornwood area to those and so forth. So that was happening, but they still decided, nah, we're going back to the Temple of Elemental Evil. So that's what they did. So they go back to the Temple of Elemental Evil, and I get all my shit back together and everything like that. And they have their maps, their crude maps that they had been doing and so forth. And so from memory, we're trying to remember where they left off, what they've cleared, what they haven't cleared. I have most stuff marked on my map of what they've cleared and all that type of stuff. But before they get there, by the way, here's another thing. This is going to be an hour-long video. Watch. On the way to the temple, they have to go through Hamlet, which is part of the original module. That's the town that's connected somewhat to the temple area. There's Hamlet, and then there's Nob, which Nob is right next to the temple itself. But Hamlet is before you get there. So they go, and they have history in Hamlet. So they go there, and they stay the night there. It's good food, it's good lodging, and so forth. I roll for random shit. I do that whenever they're camping, wherever they're staying, whatever. I roll for random stuff to happen. I roll for a random encounter at like middle of the night. So off the top of my head, I'm like, okay, the barmaid who they know very well, her name is Muffins. She is a dwarf female that is the barmaid there, and she says, she yells up to them, hey guys, come on down here, something's happened, and we need you down here. They come running down there, and they're like, somebody has just stolen all the saddlebags off your horses in the stables back there. So they have two rangers, high level rangers in the group. So the rangers immediately are like, we're going to go track them and find them. It doesn't take them very long. These are low level thieves that were stealing this shit off the saddlebags. It was the saddle. What do you call it? The stable boy was the one that sleeps up above the stables that heard, and he went after him, but he didn't get down there in time. He saw him run off. He says they went that way, and so they go after him. It doesn't take them long. They catch him. They have a rope of entanglement. The one ranger does, ropes him up, and just for shits and giggles, ties them to the cave bear, the giant cave bear, and starts dragging them back to town. So they're being drugged by a giant cave bear, all coiled up together in this rope of entanglement. They're screaming the whole way, "We'll never do it again. We're sorry. We didn't mean to. We'll never do it again. We promise, don't feed us to the bear, and all that." So they get hauled back into the middle of town. By now, the guard is there. The guard's like, "What the fuck is that? Why is there a cave bear?" And the ranger's like, "No, it's mine. It's my pet." Or the druid, he's ranger druid. He's like, "It's mine. It's my pet. He won't hurt anybody," and so forth and so on. And the guards are like, "Hey, just, can you just have it go to the druid grove? There's a druid grove in Hamlet, and so forth." And then they basically say, well, we're going to take these guys and lock them up, so forth and so on. Everything's recovered. One of the party members, I don't remember how this all went down, but one of the party members was like, "Hey, we want one of their hands taken on each one of them. That's the only appropriate, for them to." And the guards are like, whoa, that's a little severe for just some kids stealing some, some low-level thieves, low-level bandits, stealing some saddlebags. That's pretty steep, And they're like, "Hey, look, the stuff in our saddlebags is worth a lot of gold. It's worth a lot of money and everything." And they're like, "Well, that's up to the magistrate. We'll explain what your request to the magistrate." They haul them off to the tower, the guard tower, and put them in custody and put them in a cell or whatever. Everybody goes back to bed. Of course, the gnome illusionist assassin decides that he waits for everybody else to go back to sleep. He goes back. He goes over to the guard tower where he knows they're being kept. He has a new spell because he's now 8th level. He has a new spell called Phantasmal Killer. All he has to do is be within a certain distance to know where their location is of the affected the target that he wants to put this on. He doesn't actually have to be in there with them. He just has to know that they're and be within the range. He sneaks in invisible because he's a assassin in stealth. He gets close enough and he targets one of the three. They're all three in the same cell. He targets one of them with this Phantasmal Killer. And what this basically does, if you don't know, is whatever the greatest fear of the person being targeted is, it manifests that, like as an illusion, and basically, literally scares them to death if they fail their saving throw. He failed his saving throw. Drops dead. Screams bloody frickin' murder. And drops dead. In the cell. The two other guys are now screaming because they just watched this dude, basically wake up screaming bloody murder like something was attacking him and then drop dead and die. They, of course, assume, holy shit, are we next? They're screaming, get us out of here, and the gnome's like, okay, I go back to bed. That's Hingle McCringleberry. Of course, none of the other party members know that he did this. This just, Next morning they get up, they go back down. Muffins is there, and Muffins is like, yeah, did you hear that one of those kids, one of those thieves, one of those bandits, I keep saying kids, but I say that because they were low level, so to me that's like kids. You're probably young, like 18 years old, 19 years old, One of those guys died in his cell, just dropped dead, like he was being attacked by something, but there was nothing in there. Was no marks on him, no nothing. He just dropped dead. And they're all like, and Hangle was like, yeah, that's weird, huh? And they just left it at that. They just, okay, well, we're moving on and we're going to go to the temple. And so, of course, then they did that first. Then they went to the temple. So then, back at the temple, they decide they need someplace safe that they can go back to in and out of the temple. Because their idea is they're going to go in there and farm XP. They're going to go in there and finish, because they never did finish clearing it. It's much lower level than they are now, so it'll be easier for them to go in there and clear it and everything. But their idea is to just basically farm some XP. I don't know if they think they can level up again before they go after the Frost Giants. Very unlikely. That's a lot of XP. But regardless, that's what they want to do. So they find a cave that has some mountain lions in it. Of course, the druid is able to speak with animals. He convinces them, you guys need to leave. There's a giant cave bear coming, and he's going to want this cave. I'm a druid. I know this for a fact. And then he has this fucking cave bear, of course, play the part of the bear that's coming to take the cave and everything. The mountain lions are like, yeah, we're out of here. So the mountain lions leave. They now have a cave to use as a little, headquarters. They go back into the temple. They start they're going through areas that they know they haven't been to before. They start clearing everything. I'm not going to go into all the encounters and all that shit. The last encounter, I think, they went through, they found they opened a door and they found a troll chief who was in this badass bone armor. Badass looking troll. Oh, there was a Hydra with a keeper that was a troll as well. And they had to fight him. And as you know with trolls, if you don't burn the carcass, chop them up, burn the carcass, they can regenerate. And they try to burn it, it won't burn. So they were smart enough to research it, and they found it had a ring of fire resistance on it. So then they were able to burn it. They had killed the Hydras. In first edition, Hydras are punks. Hydras are weak. They don't do a lot of damage. They look scary, but they're not really. They killed the Hydra. They killed the troll. Then they find this troll chief in a room. He has been invited by both the fire temple and the water temple inside the temple of elemental evil, the sub-temples. And they each want him to basically swear fealty to that particular one, so that his army of trolls or whatever will work for them. So they've each lured him there and given him, each temple doesn't know that the other did that, but they've both done that. So now he's got these gifts that they have given him to try and get him on their side. When they enter the room, our party enters the room, the troll he's smart enough, he's a chief. He's like, oh, there's too many of these. They're and he tries to talk his way out of it, basically. He's like, hey, look, no fight. He speaks broken common. He's like, no fight. I help you, whatever. He's trying to basically talk his way out of it. They're not having it. He can tell they're going to attack him. He's like, here. And he starts he had an emerald belt that had been given to him, and he had a ruby necklace that had been given to him. He starts giving this shit, and he's like, here, take this. Don't, because he knows he can't fight all of them. They're too many of them, too strong. But they're not having it, and they end up killing him anyway. Because he's evil. I mean, he's a troll, but he did try to get his way, to parlay his way out of it. It didn't work. And that's where we ended. There was a whole bunch of other stuff they went through in the temple and everything, but I don't need to go into detail there with all that. But yeah, that's how this, so between the two sessions, all that happened. All those things. All that side shit. All the, you name it. That all happened. Last thing, I'll leave you with this. So Ethan, who plays Atal, who is he is a magic user thief. He's also the one who does the 3D printing, and he did some frost. He gave me a bunch of frost giants over there. But that's the chief. I don't know if that's gonna focus for you or not. I wish it would, because it's pretty cool. Come on now. Give me some focus there, camera. Not gonna, no. Anyway, he's pretty cool. That's gonna be like the Frost Giant King right there. And then, but he printed a bunch of them. So there's another one. He printed a bunch of these guys. So we've got when they do decide to go see the Frost Giants. We've got minis and stuff. So anyway, I think that's everything. God, I hope so. If you have stuck through this entire thing, you're a better person than I probably. Hopefully you broke it up into pieces to watch this. So, let's see. So we haven't done this for a while. When I do really long videos, those that have been watching for a while, you know that I give a secret word just to see who in the comments can say that they know the secret word, which tells me that they watched the whole video, or at some point they ended up watching the end of the video. This time we're going to go with variegated nauticus. There you go. There's your words, the words of the video, the secret words of the video. Variegated nauticus. So anyway, guys, that's it. What is today? Monday. So tomorrow, I think there's a Beer 30. So if I get any comments, questions, so forth and so on, tomorrow's Beer 30, we'll address those. And until then, we'll catch you on the flip side.